So I noticed a lot of funny things in life. I was just thinking about some interesting conversations that I've had with people over the times, uh, over things that I still haven't quite understood. Um, so I thought I'd share those. Um, so a little bit about myself, like the longest relationship I've had. Yeah, watch out, you know. The longest relationship I've had this so far was with a, you know, a couple from India, and we used to get together, and they were a married couple, and they had an open relationship, and I was single, and I'm still friends with them. They have a son now who's, gosh, he's like 10, and they live up in Canada now. But I'd go over there and eat dinner with them, and we'd talk about our day, and we were friends. We were family, and you know, um, but I was laughing because one day, so they lived in this like duplex, and one day, like when they were cleaning up after dinner, Nick was doing the dishes, and we were talking about boys because my parents never freaking talked to me about boys. All my dad said was, "Don't have sex before marriage." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, Dad. That fucking helps." So I'm like, and Nick was like 45, at the time. Like he's like a few years older than me, and his wife's lovely, and she, they have their shit together, And he's like, "Heather, you guys find you intimidating." I'm like, "But why?" I'm like, "I'm understanding it, but why?" He goes, I think at the time, yeah, I think at the time I said, I think my response at the time was, "Yeah, but Heather, people find you intimidating." I said, "Well, they need to grow a pair of balls." And I remember them cracking up, and I'm like, he goes, "See, that's why." And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Yo, that's like running away from a baby deer." I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "Yo, I don't know what to tell you then." Yo, but they're like hilarious though. But they always like, and I would help them because they'd struggle with their marriage too, and like, um, they've always been there for me. Um, and for like years, we'd hung, we lived in the same town before they moved to Canada. But I just remember laughing about that shit, like all parallels. I also want to reflect on that. I know the English language, but I'm kind of freaking illiterate because I misspell words all the time. And when I was in college and wrote all these essay papers, um, I noticed that I'd be writing so fast that I would literally be skipping the first letter out of every word, or I'd be spelling them backwards. And I'm like, because I remember, like, okay, let me see, what did I just write down? Then I'm like, what the fuck, yo? Like, and I didn't even notice it happening, and then it just kept happening. Um, and I'm like, what the hell? So that was always interesting. I don't know. Just, funny things. I don't know. I've just always kind of just done, you know, my own thing because when I grew up in a household where my dad was raised Jewish and my mom was raised Catholic. They met in high school. They were high school sweethearts in Long Island. They lived right down the street and went to school actually with the people from Amityville Horror. Um, my mom went to school to be a nurse. My dad was an accountant. They went to two separate colleges. They were always like separated and stuff, which is very interesting. And then they got married when they graduated college and had me before, like when they were like 23. And it's interesting because we have these home videos on VHS where I was saying we were having a Hanukkah, my first Hanukkah, at 3 years old, and my dad had videotaped it, I remember saying the Jewish prayer in Hebrew at 3 years old, and my grandmother gave me a blue dress for my Barbie doll, like those like little kid things. Came with like shoes and stuff. It was so cute. And I remember like the Shabbos was lit, and then like the first candle. So you like light the Shabbos, and then you light like the first candle for the first night, and you pray in Hebrew. And I remember like my mom like reprimanding me because I was like playing with the fire, you know. And she was like, "Don't blow it out." And I was like thinking to myself, I knew she was gonna say that, and I knew she was gonna reprimand me. So I was like, and I remember on the camera, like you see my eyes rolling. You see me just kind of like doing it anyway when she's not looking. I'm like, like heavier. um, I don't know, just like all these crazy memories are coming back to me. It's very interesting. Um, Videos of me and my birthday in the Centerville house. We grew up in Centerville back in Cable's Mill neighborhood when it was like first developing. So we were like one of the first houses out there. And it was a 5 bedroom, 3 floor home with like an underground basement. Lived on a hill, so we had a great uh, sledding hill, so all the kids in the neighborhood would come to our house and sled. Or we just live inside. I slept outside a lot with my dog. I was always hanging out with the dog, or catching bugs, or catching frogs, or making cricket farms, and always outside playing. Or I'd go down and play in the forest. None of the other kids wanted to do that. They wanted to stay at home, or the girls wanted to, you know, stay inside. Or they wanted to play Power Rangers, so I usually played by myself. Or I'd go over to a couple friends' houses, and I had a lot of girlfriends in the house, so I just kind of like go from house to house, because then their parents are like, okay, now, they told my friend, okay, now we gotta go do this, and I'm like, whatever. So I'd like just hop to the next house, or I'd go play in my room, move furniture around. 4 years old. Anyway, uh, we always traveled all the time, vacations throughout 3.5 weeks in Europe, Denmark. Slept on a yacht for like 4 days because there was a storm. I had to be at this like ship on an island. That shit was crazy. Hung out with a bunch of kids that didn't even speak English, and yet we all played together. That was cool. Lived off of Wiener Schnitzel. Slept in like castles that were like old as shit. um, Traveled the world, man. Like every year, we were always freaking traveling. That's why I'm freaking tired. And when you're used to just going and going your whole life, and then you finally sit down, you're like, what the hell now? It gets started to get boring. But it's been a very interesting time. There's just a few things, and just thought I'd share that. Some good memories. Drinking out of the hose outside, picnics, you know, sprinklers. You'd always have to like jump over the sprinkler because otherwise, like if you landed on it, because we all landed on it at some point. I don't know if kids know that nowadays. Like back then, you'd actually play outside and be on a slip and slide, which is a piece of plastic with water that goes down it, and you'd slide on the front lawn because you could play outside on the grass. It's still cool. We played Twister. That's a fun game. Went to Toys R Us. I had earned enough money, I think like lemonade money or something. I went to Toys R Us and bought my first Nintendo for like $65. They came with a Super Mario 3 game. So you just saying, like, just reflecting on all these good memories of, they're still there, and yeah, I'm just feeling good. So, yeah. All right, love you guys.